burlesque. Doom, doom, you say you wanna be. Doom, 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 dun, 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 dun. All of the beautiful people shining at. Does that intro make up for the fact that I haven't made a video in about 5 months? And if not, does the outfit make up for it? Yeah? Yeah. As always, we take moments to appreciate the effort here because it's not just about the history, it's about the glamour. So, shoe cam, because y'all know I gotta do a matching shoe. Y'all know I gotta do a matching shoe. Okay. Welcome back to the Vintage and Channel. Welcome back to the Vintage and Color YouTube channel where we talk about history, fashion, gay folks. I don't have a good intro yet. I'm sorry. But yeah, I've been gone for a really long time. I apologize about that. I have ADHD genuinely, like not just for funsies or aesthetic, like I really do. I write books. I make TikTok content, not anymore because screw TikTok. I'm a YouTuber. And so I just do a lot of creative things. And so I have an ebb and flow. And the ebb has really been affecting my YouTube channel. So I just haven't had anything for you guys in a little bit. We're just going to pick back up talking about the history of stripper culture in the Black community. And I want to do a quick recap. Let's just kind of recap part one of the history of stripper culture in the Black community. So, of course, in the late 1860s, an English traveling dance troupe brought burlesque over to the Americas. Although burlesque was kind of on its way out over there across the pond, it really took off in America and spread from New York and all throughout the country. And then that was bolstered by the 1890s World Fair, or maybe it was the 1880s World Fair, one of the two, where a Middle Eastern dancer by the name of Little Egypt debuted belly dance here in America for the first time, and white people absolutely went crazy over that. However, Black folks had already been doing something similar. Black people were not unaccustomed to provocative dance styles, as we have brought a lot of our traditional tribal dances over from Africa that involved a lot of shimmying, gyrating, hip movements, booty movements, etc. And those things just kind of carried on with us throughout the generations. And that culminated in what we called the hoochie coochie dance, which is where women would shimmy their chests or shake their hips from table to table. We recognized that as just another part of our culture that white people were just now catching on to. Also in the late 1800s, the 1890s, and even the 1900s, Black women would sometimes travel with traveling circuses that would have body dancers, and body dancers would do these very suggestive bump and grind, hip thrusting dances utilizing the poles of the tents. And some of the women would even climb and spin on these poles, which would set the stage for pole work in exotic dance. Oh, one of these women was blues singer Ethel Waters before she became a blues singer and got, a little bit more chubby. She was very thin and she had a very big, bright smile, which was enticing to people. So she kind of used her energy and her thin body, and she was one of these body dancers. And then fast forward to the 1920s and 30s, where Black women are even more risque, particularly in nightclubs. They're more scantily clad. You have dancers like Kalawa, who would pose all nude for a 1930s all Black review. You would have women like Lena Horne before her singing and acting fame, where she was also one of these dancers. And she commented that even though they were not as nude as a white burlesque dancer by the name of Sally Rand, who was one of the most popular burlesque dancers at the time, she said they were very close to being as nude as Sally Rand. And then, of course, you had Josephine Baker, who was the biggest sensation overseas in Paris and set the stage for what Black burlesque dancers were expected to do over in the United States. Now, this brings us kind of into the late 1930s, early 1940s, where I think kind of the beginnings of shake dance, like the golden age of shake dance, start to emerge. And someone asked me like, hey, can we talk more about like shake dance, and can I know more about, like, I want to learn more about that, so let's kind of focus on shake dance just for a little bit. So shake dancers is what black strippers or black burlesque dancers were called, because a lot of the times black women were not allowed to work regular burlesque circuits, mainstream burlesque circuits. They weren't called burlesque dancers. Burlesque was for white women or even sometimes non-black women of color, but not for black women. So the black community coined their own phrase for this sort of dancing, which was shake dance. And shake dance was exactly as it sounded. It was all about shaking, shimmying the hips, the booty, the chest, whatever. It was a new, frenetic, sexy style of dance that was more modern and risque. And a lot of black women were not allowed to travel with burlesque troupes that were allowed into mainstream clubs. If they were traveling to more mainstream burlesque circuits, it was with like kind of as like the closer for a white troupe, or as like the opener for a white troupe, just kind of like secondary to a white burlesque performance troupe or whatever.
Known as the elegant Tony Elliott. Everybody put me up on a kind of a pedestal. I was kind of a snob and all that.
Or whatever. Um, and to me, what I've seen the key difference being between shake dance, like black version of burlesque, and the white version of burlesque, is that shake dance just feels a little less stiff. Like I've seen vintage white burlesque dancers dance and vintage black burlesque dancers dance, and the black burlesque dancers, they just feel a little bit more free and fluid and less stiff. And also, um, there's more attention paid to like rhythm than just getting naked. And I'm not even trying to be shady, because I know I shade white people like crazy on this chat. I'm not trying to, I promise I'm not trying to be shady. Go look up some vintage. Matter of fact, you ain't even gotta look it up. I'm gonna just put them here in this video. Y'all, like, tell me the white women ain't struggling to catch a beat. They struggling a little bit. I'm sorry, bro. Like they were. And that's kind of the main difference that I really noticed. But of course there were like social differences as well, because white burlesque dancers would sometimes get paid significantly more, often get paid significantly more than their black female counterparts. Then their black female counterparts were still getting paid significantly more than black women who were doing menial jobs in hard labor or domestic labor and things like that. Oh, goodness me. So we're in the 1930s, and you have a variety of different types of black burlesque dancers, black shake dancers. Some of them are more like the traditional showy, like showmanship type of burlesque, such as Elizabeth China Doll Dickerson, who was known for wearing like balloons all over her body, where she would be covered in this like very skimpy bikini, and she would go throughout the crowd and let men pop the balloons until she was, all the balloons had been popped, and then she would run off stage. That's more of a traditional kind of fun, interactive version of burlesque that you might would see with the white troops. Then you had women who were more so about the athleticism or the acrobatics, such as Lottie the Body Graves.
University, and a young man in there, his name was Pee Wee. My name is Lottie. But he said, hey, you have a body, and I think it should be named Lottie the Body.
Who was a trained dancer. She would do jump splits. She would do a lot of like kind of tumbles and jumps, and actually incorporate modern dance into her style, because she was trained in how to do that. You had women who would do the more sexy route, such as Miss Topsy, who as you could see, bodied bodied. So all she really had to do was take off her clothes, do a little You know what I'm saying? And she was headlining in Japan, where she was a very big act, as well as London. So she was more of like the sex pot version. You had women such as Madeline Saji Jackson, who incorporated like actual like belly dance and this more fluid sensuality to it. You had women like Ethelyn Butler, who was an absolute stallion. I mean, I'm talking Meg, please, can we make a movie about Ethelyn Butler and let Megan the Stallion play her? Because I mean, over 6 feet tall, 190, 200 some pounds, and most all of it is curve. Jesus. I know she was driving men crazy. And then of course there were also women who were able to kind of break across the color lines, such as Jean Idell, who was the first Black woman to become a fan dancer. She said that she was kind of selected by, I believe it was a white fan dancer that offered to teach her how to do it. And so she learned, and there weren't too many other Black women who were doing fan dance because, again, that was a more traditional version of burlesque, and Black women weren't really allowed in that. So they didn't have access to, get those big ostrich feather fans and work with them. So she was literally one of the first, if not the first, Black burlesque dancer to be a fan dancer. Of course, there was also, ugh, girl, I could go on forever and ever. I'm not going to. But the point is that shake dancers, honestly, I feel like because Black women weren't really allowed to be mainstream burlesque dancers like their white counterparts, they got very creative in um the variety of different acts that they performed, because on top of a lot of the times not being allowed in these spaces, they wanted to just be regular dancers or regular showgirls, and because they were not allowed to do that either, they also were kind of forced to go into burlesque. And so this led to this market being very saturated. So a lot of them were all trying to stand out. So they weren't all just bump and grind, hip thrusting, shoulder shimmying acts. A lot of them were actually trained dancers. Like they, knew how to actually dance. They could do jump splits, and they could do flips, and they could do this and they could do that. And so that was kind of, I think, what set shake dancers apart from burlesque dancers was just, I think, the wide range and variety and types of black burlesque or black shake dancers that there were, I should say. Then there was also, I gotta tell you about this lady. Gotta tell you about this lady. What was that lady name? Baby Scruggs. Baby Scruggs, who was a tassel twirler. That was what she was known for. She was known for putting tassels on her chi-chis and twirling the tassels on her chi-chis in time with the music. And she would perform with her mama. Her mama had been a vaudeville performer back in the earlier 1900s, like the 1920s, and they would sometimes perform together. And her chi-chis were such a big deal that she actually got them insured by the Lloyds of London. Again, people just had the most interesting lives. If you want to know more about shake dance and this particular era um of stripper history, of black stripper history, I highly, highly, highly recommend watching Intellectual Media's video on it, because she goes into much more detail. I went into a lot more detail in my last video that I did on it, but I would definitely say to check her out if you want to know more. So that was kind of where we left off. We had gotten into like the 50s, and we were going into the 60s, because the 60s is when the sexual revolution happened, and so much changed about the way women presented themselves sexually. And the burlesque landscape was also starting to change. So as we get into the 60s, women, 60s and 70s, and the 70s is where it really goes crazy, but women are starting to get a little bit more risque, a little bit more bold, and thus the club owners are also getting a little more risque and a little more bold. And it's not like which came first, the chicken or the egg. It was just the entire culture was shifting, and people were getting a lot more free spirited. And so these club owners were starting to expect these vintage burlesque dancers who were mostly showmen, who were mostly here for the dance aspect, the entertainment aspect, and the nudity kind of came secondary. They were expecting them to show more and more skin. And of course, the previous generation of burlesque dancers didn't want to do that, which led this big market for the new wave of exotic dancers to come in and fill that void. And along with these women were a lot of um like wild acts. Of course, you still had your like your vintage burlesque, you know, you had your vintage just like, okay, just I'm gonna be cute and I'm gonna be sexy and I'm gonna take my clothes off, but you ain't gonna see this and you ain't gonna see that. You still have those girls, but you were now starting to get women who would just bear all. and, and on top of bearing all, they were willing to do a lot more on stage as well. One of these women was my new vintage crush, Monica Kennedy. Monica Kennedy, Monica Kennedy is an absolute legend. Okay, she's an icon. She's a legend and she is the moment. And quite frankly, she deserves way, way way more credit as one of the pioneering ladies to do it in the adult entertainment industry, because Monica not only was one of, no, she was not only the highest paid burlesque dancer at this time, she was the wildest. I can't get into everything that this woman would do on stage, but let's just say not only would she bear all, but she would also have men fighting for a chance to just get a little taste of Monica, of the Monica experience on stage. And yes, she would let them have it on stage, if you catch my drift. And she was bad as hell. She was bad as that was a she was a fucking bad, y'all. I'm sorry. She was a baddie. She was a baddie. And I thought she was white, but she was no, she was just like a very light-skinned, almost white passing black woman. Bad as hell. Okay. And she was really one of the most popular, if not the most popular black or stripper rather in general to come out of the clubs in the 60s and the 70s. And right behind her was dancer Tanqueray. Tanqueray was a black stripper who started making a name for herself in the New York clubs because she would again not gonna hit the monetization with this one. She would put baby bottle nipples on her chest and squirt out chocolate milk. I mean, there's no other way to say it. That's what she would do. She would squirt chocolate milk out on the crowd and have these white men fighting to drink chocolate milk. Um, I mean, hey. And then on top of that, she was glamorous. Both of these women were. They cultivated their looks with like big hair. Monica Kennedy wore a platinum blonde wig. Tanqueray often wore big curls. And they would custom make their own outfits covered in like sequins and rhinestones and things like that. So they were mixing the glamour of old school burlesque with the freakiness of like the new school uh sexual revolution that was happening. And this kind of set the stage for the early corn industry to start emerging, which would really start to kind of emerge in the 70s and the 80s. um so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I definitely enjoyed making it. I'm not getting monetized. But I have been thinking about content like this that is not going to be very safe for YouTube and other places that I can put this kind of content. I don't know if it'll be like a YouTube membership or Patreon, but there are some things that I want to talk about, such as the history of Black women in corn or adult film. And I know that that video will not that's just not happening on the tube. So if you guys are interested in a video like that, comment below where you might want to see that. If you want to see that on Patreon, if you guys think it'll be safer on Patreon, or if I should do a YouTube membership and make it something that's available to YouTube members, if you guys don't want to go to a different space or a different platform. And just let me know. And also let me know what you thought about the video. Let me know what you thought about the fit. Wait, one more time. One more time for the shoe cam. One more. I wish I had like a lavender lavalier because that would be so cute. Anywho, thank you guys for watching, and until next time, y'all. Bye. Find all 3 parts of the original video on this page.